This is the Sunday Sit Down, the only show that takes power to the extreme. Hit my music. Hey everyone, welcome to Hero and the Kid. This is episode 21 of the Sunday Sit Down. We have a very special, inspiring guest today. You may have seen my guest on the Joe Rogan Experience. He has competed against The Mountain, Brian Shaw, Eddie Hall, and a bunch of other people. He was on Mark Bell's podcast, and we will get down to it on this show. Is Mark Bell really that smelly? My guest today is an all-around great person. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce Mr. Rob Kearney.
What's up, Will? How you doing, man?
How's it going? I'm doing good.
Good. So now, which one? Now, in the title of your podcast, are you hero or the kid?
I'm the hero.
All right, I figured as much.
Yeah. All right. So I got a lot of questions to ask, but this first one comes from Matt Mills. He's the owner of our gym, Lightning Fitness, and he said the first time I met Rob was at my first Strongman competition about 12 years ago. We were doing stones and using tacky for the first time. I was going to use tape on my forearms, and Rob had decided to go bare skin and shirtless. Luckily, he went first because I was going to try and be tough like him. He was a bloody mess after. The stone ripped up his forearms and tacky was everywhere. Needless to say, I used tape and kept my shirt on, keeping my skin intact. What do you have to say about this, Rob?
It was a bad rookie move, that's for sure. I think back then I was only 17 years old. I think that was my second strongman contest I ever done, and I didn't have any experience doing Atlas stones, so I just kind of did what I saw online and was honestly trying to emulate, what my current coach used to do, Derek Poundstone, and that's how he would always do his stone runs. And just kind of throw the tacky on his forearms and go for it. So I realized that was a bad idea a few reps in, because I wasn't doing a stone series. It was a stone for reps, which, being in our gym, that a stone series is only about 5 reps. When we're doing reps, for a stone, it was pretty light. So I think I did about 12 or 15 reps that time. So just the repetitive motion just completely tore up my forearms. And, I still think I kind of have like some scars on my forearms and some rough skin. And I learned pretty quickly not to do that anymore.
Wow. All right. So moving on, I'm going to be a sophomore year. I'm going into my sophomore year in high school. What was school like for you? And I know you didn't come out until you were 22, but was it hard fitting in at school?
For me, I ended up switching schools from middle school to high school, so I didn't stay in my town. So I'm originally from North Stonington, Connecticut, and was going to Wheeler. But then actually moved up to Norwich and went to NFA. And it is a massive school. And I ended up really enjoying that time. And my biggest thing when I was in school was just trying to stay involved and stay active as much as possible. So I joined student government. I played baseball. I started playing football my sophomore year. And then I actually also joined the cheerleading team my junior year. So I was really active across a bunch of different places throughout the school, and I didn't really stick to just one thing. I was in the school band. I had a band outside of school. So for me, high school was awesome. I had a lot of fun and really just tried to stay as active and busy as possible, kind of without getting caught up in the drama that is high school itself.
Yeah. When you did come out, I know you said your family was very supportive, but what about other people in your life? Did you lose any friends because of it?
Fortunately, I didn't. I think one of the nice things when I came out as gay when I was 22, where I was at a point in my life where I was really confident in myself, and for me, losing friendships was less important than being myself and being true to myself. So that's why, when I got to that point where I was able to come out, I was super confident in myself. I was excited about doing it. And I really, really did luck out at the fact that, if anything, my friendships and my relationships with my family got stronger because of it, because I was no longer holding on to this burden of pretending to be somebody I wasn't.
Yeah. Now, this is another from Matt Mills, and he says, When we were at America's Strongest Man together back in 2014 in Vegas is when Rob came out to me. I said, yeah, Rob, I always thought that anyways. And when Rob asked me how I knew, I said, because you sing to the Backstreet Boys and your nipples are pierced. Rob, what can you tell everyone watching about this?
Man, you dove back into the archives for these, Will. I love it. So the moment he's really referring to is when Lightning Fitness was originally a gym. We were in the same building, the same, kind of complex we're in now, just at the other end where there's a dance studio, and we moved to the current location. So, the gym, the membership was much smaller back then. So I had, kind of volunteered my time and everything to help Matt move down to the other end of the building. And, one of the first things we did was set up the sound system so we could actually, have some music while we're lugging all the mats and the weights back and forth. And about halfway through the day, Backstreet Boys came on the radio, and I just stopped everything I was doing and was just singing in this big empty room to the Backstreet Boys. So I think, like Matt had said, that was possibly one of the first and easiest giveaways. And, fortunately, as you mentioned, I've known Matt for almost 12 years now, and he has been one of my closest friends for those past 12 years. We have gone from amateurs to pros together. He's helped me throughout my entire journey of getting to and still competing at World's Strongest Man. And then it's just always nice to have somebody that's been there with you from the beginning and has continually supported you in your career.
Yeah, I've known him for 4 years, and he's truly an awesome person. But when you're on Mark Bell's podcast, when you're talking about the hate mail you get, that has to be frustrating and gets old quickly. But it was inspiring to hear how much perseverance and dedication you have trying to change the perceptions. How do you handle this? And did you take the hate and turn it into motivation?
Yeah, for me, it started pretty quickly with getting the hate mail and everything. And, when I'd come out in 2014, it ended up going viral almost overnight. A friend of mine ended up writing an article about me being the first and only openly gay professional strongman. And that kind of went across the world. And next thing you know, I was being interviewed by Huffington Post and TMZ, and Conan O'Brien was talking about me, and it really just exploded. But, with that and with the positivity of me finally being able to be myself, came all the negative. And, like you had mentioned, it's something I still deal with on a daily basis, on Instagram and social media with people messaging me. And for me, I learned pretty quickly that if I had put all my energy on the negative comments I was receiving, that it would take such an emotional toll on me, and I wouldn't really be doing anything positive with the platform that I was given. So that's when I kind of turned the dial a little bit to use all the negative comments that I get as motivation, really, to excel in the sport of strongman and show everybody in the world that no matter what your sexual orientation is, you can be strong and compete in these hyper-masculine sports.
Yeah, there's people that tell us that we can't do things like all the time, but we always go out and prove them wrong and just keep getting better and better.
People don't look at you and expect you to have multiple state records in powerlifting, but you still do it.
And I got 2 American records, so.
Exactly.
But we have been watching a lot of strongman YouTube videos showing their diet swaps with their spouses. Do you plan on doing something similar with your husband?
We have talked about it. I think a lot of what we're looking to do is we actually have a video that's going to be coming out next week where I actually joined Joey in a CrossFit workout. So let's just say he did very well and I didn't. When it comes down to nutrition, though, it's funny. Once I started working with Stan Efforting on the vertical diet, Joey actually made that same transition. So our diets really aren't that different. I just eat more, but we actually eat pretty much the same thing. But I think that would be something fun to do with having me eat, pretty much half the calories I normally eat in a day, and having him double them up.
I know you brought up Stan Efforting, but we're gonna be talking about that, but it's later on. But right now we're going to be talking about your tattoos. So what do your tattoos symbolize? And we really like your inner strength one you have.
So the first tattoo I ever got was actually on my calf, and it's a New York Yankees symbol. So I've been a Yankees fan in and out, diehard, ever since I was a young kid. And that was actually a 16th birthday present from my mom. So I went and got that tattoo when I was 16. Then I also have the tribal tattoo up on my arm, which, to be totally honest, I just thought looked cool, so I wanted to get it. And then the inner strength one is the one that has the most meaning. And that's one that I came up with about 7 years ago now is when I got it. And this was at a point in my life where I was kind of starting to realize my sexuality and realizing that I was holding on to a lot of things that were kind of holding me back. And I realized that no matter how strong you are in the gym, if you're not strong mentally and emotionally, you're never going to succeed in life. And that's where I came up, with inner strength. And I think, symbolically putting it on the inside of my arm, was kind of a really powerful thing for me.
Yeah. About our 3 interviews ago, I interviewed a person named 36 Chambers Tattoo Studio, and he owns his own tattoo shop, and we were talking about tattoos like the whole time. And everyone knows us because we're a comic book channel, but we did not talk about comics at all for that whole show. We just talked about tattoos and everything. But maybe you could go watch that, see what you thought.
Yeah, awesome.
I saw on your Instagram that your husband's going to be an OT. My mom is a speech therapist, and she was curious to know what population he wants to work with. And my mom works in a skilled nursing facility with geriatrics.
So Joey he just passed his certifying exam in occupational therapy, and his main goal is actually to become a hand therapist. So he really likes the orthopedic and musculoskeletal side of things. So as a certified hand therapist, he would be working on orthopedic injuries from the shoulder down to the hand to the fingertips, and really just helping rehab patients, getting back to using their hands for activities of daily life that they might have lost, whether that be due to surgery, due to traumatic injury, amputation, anything like that. That's kind of where his passion has led him to.
Yeah. What was it like competing in your very first strongman competition?
So my first strongman competition, I was 17 years old. And I had only been seriously working out for about, I would say, like 3 months, So prior to that, like playing football, I would work out, with the football team, but I never really dedicated time to getting stronger. And for me, I was training at a CrossFit gym at the time. And there was a Tuesday morning where I had walked into the gym and they said, "Hey, Rob, there's a strongman contest on Saturday. We signed you up for it." So I had never tried any of the implements. I didn't even know what the events were until I showed up at the contest, and really just said, "Okay, let's do it." And I had an absolute blast. I'm pretty sure the events, we had an axle clean and press. There was an arm over arm pull. We had fingal fingers, farmer's carry, and there was a deadlift for reps as well. So those were the 5 events of my first strongman contest. And like I said, I had never done any of them. I'd done the deadlift just because of, working out in the gym. I had done overhead press, but I had never done it with an axle or having to clean it every single rep. And then the other 3 I just never even touched. So I went there. I learned as much as I could. I was the youngest competitor by about 10 years, and I took dead last place. But really just fell in love with the sport. And that's kind of what put me on my path to now being one of the strongest men in the world.
What was your reaction when the people said they signed you up for a strongman competition?
For me, I was shocked because, I was at the gym. It was 5:30 in the morning. So that's not exactly the first thing I was thinking about. Because again, being at a CrossFit gym, I learned really quickly that I sucked at CrossFit. But I was good at like lifting heavy stuff. So mentally I was like, all right, what torture am I going to be put through this morning? And, for them to throw that on me 4 days before the competition, I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to a strongman competition now. And, was trying to Google stuff and figure out what the heck was going to be going on. So I was, I think intimidated, but really excited because it's something that I'd always wanted to do after seeing it on TV, but never had the opportunity or didn't know where to start. So it was really exciting for me to kind of get my feet wet and see what the sport was all about.
You said in an interview that you took last place for your first 8 tournaments. What was your reaction to this?
It was it definitely felt defeating, to work so hard and always come in last. And, at that time, I was competing a lot. I was competing at least once a month, sometimes more. And what I did when I got to college was I, put a dot on the map where my college was. And pretty much if there was a competition within a 5-hour driving distance, I was going to go to it. And that's what I did for pretty much the first 3 years of my strongman career. And, as you mentioned, I took dead last in 8 competitions in a row. And to me, it was, I didn't really have much experience in competing in strongman. I didn't have much experience really in the events. In those first 8 competitions, there was at least one event at every show that I had never done before. But I signed up for the competition because I wanted to get better and I wanted to meet people in the sport. So while it was disheartening to come in last every single time, I think it also helped set the stage for where I'm at now in motivating me to get better and never get completely disheartened by defeat, because I think we learn more in defeat than we do in success. So, I think it was a really great learning period for me to help me realize my actual potential in the sport.
Why did you want to keep doing strongman after those 8 tournaments?
I just had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I realized really quickly that there are a lot of amazing people in the sport, and it was so much fun to me. I loved the way of training for it. I loved the competition setup. And for me, it was a way to get stronger but stay athletic. So, I was missing that competitive athletic feel at when I had gotten into college and I had stopped playing football and doing, your traditional sports. So for me, it was something to really work towards and help me get better at. And I also just like the individuality of it, knowing that, when you step onto that competition floor, everything's on you. So if you didn't train hard enough, it's going to show in the competition. But if you did train hard enough, you'll see the success there as well.
Like, I remember training for the American record that I have for the deadlift, and I was like a couple weeks out, and I was going heavy for the last time for it. And I remember the record at the time was 221, I think. So I pulled 215, and it felt really hard. And my dad was like, that was 225 or something like that. So then I was like, okay, well, I unofficially broke the American record. So then when I went to the competition, I just pulled it up real easy and just broke the record. But moving on, what's it like having Derek Poundstone as a coach?
To me, it's still like the coolest thing in the world. I've been working with Derek for 2 years now, and mine and his, relationship goes back pretty far. So I met him for the first time in 2009 or 2010. And that was when I was just getting into the sport of strongman. And he was kind of the one I looked up to for the longest time because we're both from Connecticut. And I was just really excited to see a local athlete competing at World's Strongest Man. So I had reached out to him when I was younger around that time to see if I could join his training crew every once in a while. And fortunately, he let me. So I would drive and train with his crew on Saturdays every once in a while and started learning the basics from him. And we just kept a very, I wouldn't say it was a close relationship over those years, but we'd always stayed in touch. And like I said, he was my favorite athlete. So a few years ago, I had asked him to be my coach multiple times, and he kept saying no until the summer of 2018, where, his wife finally looked at him and said, why don't you just do this? Derek was pretty bitter towards the sport of strongman after not competing for so long. He didn't know how to make it a part of his life, but not be a competitor. So I think this has kind of reinvigorated his love for the sport of strongman. And for me, it gives me an extra level of motivation every time I step into the gym, because when you're coached by somebody you've looked up to for so long, you don't want to let them down. And I think that's kind of a weight that I put on my shoulders every time I compete and every time I step into the gym is, I know I have him watching me, with everything I do. So when it's 95 degrees at lightning and the last thing you want to do is that last set of, your accessory work, in my mind, I'm like, all right, well, I have to, there's a reason he put it down on the paper. There's a reason it's in the program. I have to do this. So I think it's also coming from a place where, he's achieved stuff in the sport that I want to. So he knows what it takes to get there.
Yeah, it especially sucks now at Lightning when there's no AC in the gym. And I remember a couple of days ago when you asked to swap exercises for a set. So
it was so hot. I mean, I go through about 3 t-shirts per workout. So let's just say we're doing a lot of laundry at the house right now.
Yeah. Well, that same time, I was walking towards my dad. I was warming up, and I walked towards my dad, and you were walking through the hall coming into the gym. And you were all flexed up, and it made me take a step back. And I was about to say, I do jiu-jitsu and wrestling, right?
I wouldn't be surprised if he just gave me a leg sweep and took me down in the middle of the gym one day.
But when we see you in the gym, oftentimes you are surrounded by everyone. Does this get annoying, or is this just part of being a strongman?
This is a great, this is one of the questions I don't think I've ever been asked, and I think you get to see a different side of me, Will, because, you see me almost every day when I'm at the gym. And I will say for the most part, it's okay. It's really not too much of an issue, but there has been plenty of times where, I'm getting ready for a contest or, I'm in the middle of my training and people do, just kind of interrupt me and ask me questions. And, it definitely does get frustrating, but I also do realize, we are very lucky with the gym that we train in. With the fact that it's so big, we have access to every single piece of equipment you could ever want. And people travel from all over the place to come train at our gym that we regularly train at. So I also realize that, when there's visitors coming to the gym and stuff like that, that they do want to talk to me. They might want to take pictures and all that stuff. I think the crappy thing is just some people don't realize that there's a time and a place for it. And, as I'm setting up for a deadlift, it isn't the great time to come and talk to me.
Yeah. Does this make it like longer time while you're in the gym?
Typically, yeah. And that's always been an issue. And I think, I started training with a little crew, and that definitely helps everything. But I think I've also been a little bit more direct in my training where, it's not that I don't want to be friendly to everybody in the gym, but, I have World's Strongest Man coming up in November. So now is where we're going to start putting the gas on the pedal a little bit. And my training is really going to start kicking up. So, it's not that I'm not friendly. It's not that I don't want to talk to people, but, right now is where I'm going to start, really get serious about my training, kind of put my head down. And every time I step into that gym, it's time to work. It's not a fun fraternizing kind of hangout type environment for anymore. It's time to really, put my nose to the grind and get this work in to make sure that I'm bringing the best package to World's Strongest Man in November.
Yeah, when we're at the gym, we always see that you're surrounded by a bunch of people, and that's why we barely ever just come over and start talking to you. But when we did talk to you was when you were about to leave, and then you weren't training anymore, you were leaving. So I felt like that was a good time to talk to you for like 5 minutes or so.
That's the best time to do it, or if I'm in between sets by my gym bag, that's a time where I don't have a problem with it. If people are coming up to me, as I mentioned before, I'm getting my straps on to the deadlift bar, or, I'm cranking my belt tighter, stuff like that, which, people just don't understand social cues at the fact that I'm about to try to do something. But yeah, if I'm walking around by my gym bag, I have no problem when people talk to me then.
Yeah, you brought up people coming to the gym. What was it like having Martine come into the gym and train with you?
It's awesome. I think being at this level, it's so much fun to, to call these guys my friends and, kind of plan these trips. Last summer Martinez was here. Then February I was out with Brian. A big one that I'm really trying to put together right now. And Joey and I, once, all this COVID stuff is over, we're going to be hopefully going to Scotland to hang out with the Stoltman brothers. So, it's so freaking cool to have these guys as friends and competitors. And that's, I think it was pretty surreal, with Martinez coming here after winning World's Strongest Man. one of the big reasons for the trip was so him and I could train together so I could help him with his moving events. So it's really cool to see that even the top guys in the sport still look for advice and still are trying to get better at things, even though he literally was the world's strongest man.
That was another time when we didn't come up to you and bother you. I remember my dad told me to get a picture, but I was like, I don't want to bother them. I just want to let them do their thing. So, because they're like way bigger than me, and I don't want to get like stepped on. So,
well, next time somebody comes, we'll definitely get you a picture with whoever it is.
Right. Nice, thanks. For people who are listening, how many years of training did it take to finally go after the American record?
So for me on the log press, it was one of those things that I think the first time I broke a record in the log press was 2015. It was at the Arnold Amateur World Championships. I was competing as a heavyweight amateur, and one of the events on the final day of competition was the log press. And I had known, up until that point, I had known my log press and my overhead was good, but I don't think anybody thought that I would be breaking a world record that day. And to be honest, neither did I. So I stepped on stage and I hit 405, which was a PR for me at that point, and that tied to the American record. But another athlete had also hit that weight, and it was actually that was Konstantin Janashia. So him and I were the last two athletes at that competition to do the log press, and I worked up to 425 pounds and hit that. So I broke the world record in the heavyweight amateur log press in 2015. 2016 actually was the year that I broke the world record in the 231 weight class for the log press. So my log has always been really good because I adapted that split jerk technique and really kind of focused a lot of time and energy into the log press. But it wasn't until April of 2019 where I finally had the ability to break the current American log press record that Robert Oberst had for about 4 years. So he had it set at 465 pounds. And then at the Log Press World Challenge in Giants and Europe's Strongest Man in Leeds, England in April of 2019, that's when I finally broke the American log press record. So it was almost 10 years from when I started the sport Strongman to April 2019, where I finally broke the American record.
What was your training like leading up to that?
A lot of log pressing.
Yep.
It was actually a really good time in my training because 3 weeks before that event was the Arnold Australia, which I won that. But one of the events there was also a max log press. So everything kind of tied really, really well and just lined up perfectly for me to break that record in April. So it was, I was training for the Australian Arnold pretty much full time. And those events, there was 2 overhead press events, there was Atlas Stone. So a lot of things that played really well into training for a big log press. So everything was super heavy, super high intensity. The volume was pretty low, but when you're doing 6 to 8 sets at 95%, it's heavy and it takes a lot of, toll on your body. But fortunately, it all paid off.
Like when we go to the gym, like Fridays are like accessory and arm day, and we do shoulders. So I do the log sometimes. I'm like, man, Rob makes it look so easy.
It's a science, I think it's so much different than a barbell, and it takes so much, thinking to really make it work well. Believe me, Will, overhead was one of my worst events when I started this sport. And it took a long time to get to this level. But I realized, there was a quote that I once heard from another strongman athlete. His name is Mike Mastel, and he won the amateur national championship in 2011 to turn pro. And when I was rooming with him, the first event of that contest was a log press, clean and press for reps. And he won that event. And we're back in the room after day 1 of the contest. And he said, you know what, man, if you win the overhead, you win the show. Just because it sets you up for that, that kind of momentum going into every other event. So once he said that, it kind of stuck with me that I really needed to make my overhead a lot stronger. And that's what I focused on.
What was it like competing and winning the Arnold in Australia?
Crazy. It was, that was such a wild event. To be honest, I wasn't supposed to be at that contest. One of my sponsors offered, they mentioned that they were going to be there and they offered to help cover my expenses to go to the contest. So we just kind of threw it together. I think I signed up for the show in December. So I only had about 2.5 months to train for that contest. So, and it was actually my first contest back after I'd gotten injured. So Giants Live North America 2018, I had an Atlas stone fall on my chest. I broke some ribs, tore some muscles. And I was out for a long time, and that was June of that year. So, the Arnold in Australia was going to be my first show back, and the events were really great for me. So I knew I would do well, but to be honest, I didn't think I was going to win that contest going into it, just because of how stacked the lineup was. You see Matthias Belshak, Mikhail Shivlikov, Jerry Pritchett, Rauno Heinla, all these amazing athletes, and you think, okay, like I can hold my own, but I don't know if I'll win. But fortunately, everything lined up perfectly where, I was able to squeak out the win by 1.5 points over Matthias Belshak and kind of cement my name in for the Arnold 2020.
Now we have a question from Nelson Hennessy, and he says, diet is such an important part of your life. Do you ever drink alcohol, and what does a cheat day look like?
So diet is absolutely huge for me. And, on an average day, I eat about 3 pounds of ground beef. I eat about anywhere between 8 and 12 cups of rice, and then vegetables on top of it. And, every breakfast starts with 8 eggs. So there's a lot of food, that's for sure. Maybe we'll get you on my diet for a day and see if you can handle it.
Yeah.
So
like we were thinking of doing a video where it's me eating one of Brian Shaw's meal, like a full pizza, a whole cheesecake, and like seeing if I could do that.
Which, I mean, that doesn't sound too bad.
Well, for me, I'm a long guy.
And as far as the alcohol goes, I will have a drink every once in a while, but I think, once I started training with Derek and we really got into competition prep, his big thing is no drinking during competition prep because of the negative effects that alcohol has on inflammation and performance, even if it's just 1 or 2 drinks. So I think for me, I would say probably on average, I have 1 or 2 drinks every 6 months right now. So it's really, really limited. I'm really not, drinking anything really at all. It's pretty much just special occasions. I mean, put it into perspective, after, my husband and we got married in Australia after I had won that contest, but I knew I had the American log press record attempt coming up in 3 weeks. So our wedding celebration was a glass of wine. So it wasn't exactly, like a typical wedding party, that's for sure.
Well, you brought that up. What was it like hanging out with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
It was crazy. It was completely unexpected. So when winning the Arnold Australia was so exciting and certainly a highlight of the weekend. But about a month before we left for Australia, we decided to plan our wedding for while we were there because we had never been to Australia. The weather was going to be great. So we threw together this quick wedding, and being up on stage on that Saturday night after winning, being able to talk to Arnold and getting to meet him, he had just so happened to ask what we had planned for the rest of the weekend. So in front of a few thousand people, I announced to everybody that we were going to be getting married the next day. And it was a surprise to everybody because we really hadn't told anybody. So afterwards, the morning of our wedding, I woke up to a text message from Arnold asking where and when the wedding was going to be. And unfortunately, because of the expo, he wasn't able to make it to the wedding. But when we got back to the hotel, he had actually FaceTimed me and we were talking, and he asked what we had planned for the night. So originally, Joey and I were just going to be going out to dinner by ourselves to celebrate. He told me to cancel those plans and gave us an address to meet him at. So we show up at this address, and there is this massive $50 million yacht that he had rented for the evening, where we just got on. And I mean, the yacht had more bedrooms and bathrooms than my house has, and it was just crazy gorgeous and expensive. So we got to go and hang out on that yacht with Arnold, his girlfriend, and some close friends of his. And then after that, to top it all off, he took us out to dinner afterwards. So it was, the most surreal moment of our lives, to be, kind of celebrated by an icon in our sport and in this entire industry. To kind of have that relationship with him now is great, and then looking back at the Arnold Santa Monica in January, we were over his house that evening. It's just crazy to have a friendship with somebody who's so iconic.
Was he just talking about all the movies he's done, like Terminator and all the other things he's done?
At one point, he did yell, "Get to the chopper." So, but to be honest, like, he's such a humble and awesome person that he wanted to know about me and Joey. He wanted to learn a little bit more about the intricacies of strongman and kind of where we are as a professional sport. He has so much respect for strongman and strength sports after being in bodybuilding for so many years, and to see strongman kind of get the spotlight now. I mean, strongman is the number one sport at the Arnold now. People don't go for the bodybuilding show anymore. They come to see the pro strongman competition.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to have his support as an athlete and as a person to really want to see strongman grow, and to see his genuine interest in learning about the sport and what it takes to get to this level was so freaking cool.
Yeah. Can you tell the people about some of your work's accidents and how dangerous this sport can be?
So I mentioned it a little bit before. I've been really fortunate, to be honest. I've had one serious injury that has happened to me, and that was, again, at Giants Live North America 2018. I was sitting in second place in the contest to Lawrence Chalet, and I was only about a half a point behind him, maybe 1 point. So going into the Stones, I knew I needed to put up a good performance and win the event to take home the crown. So I rushed my attempt on the first Atlas Stone and ended up rolling off the platform, falling on my chest. I broke 3 ribs, tore some muscles in my back. And those are the types of injuries where there's nothing you can really do for them. You just kind of have to wait until they heal, and then you can get back into things. So it was a long, long rehab process. Like I said, that happened June of 2018. My next contest, I didn't end up competing until March of 2019. So the rehab was nice and long. But I have been at plenty of contests where there have been pretty traumatic injuries. And, I have a master's degree in sports medicine. So, sports injuries is kind of my life. And, I've seen people pass out with 350 pounds over their head. I've seen, obviously, the most common thing we see in strongman is bicep tendon ruptures. So I've seen a lot of serious injuries. Fortunately, I haven't been on the receiving end of those.
Yeah. What was it like for you what was it like during that whole long period of time where you couldn't really do anything?
It was hard. I mean, the gym is my life. It's what I go to. It's kind of it's where I go to relieve stress. It's how I, kind of express myself. And to not be able to really put my energy and effort into training was hard. It took a toll on me where I didn't feel, focused in life. I was kind of all over the place and really didn't have motivation or drive to do anything because I didn't have anything to look forward to. That was the initial reaction. But what I learned really quickly was it was kind of a blessing in disguise to force my body to take some downtime. This is the point in my career where I was able to reach out to Derek and have him now coach me. So putting those things into perspective, while it was a horrible injury and it was really kind of a bummer, it was also exciting and what led me to kind of jumping on this crazy path to success and having, 2019 as the best competitive year I've ever had.
Yep. When a competition is coming up, tell me how everything changes and how you deal with it.
So for me, when a contest comes up, obviously from a training aspect, things get kicked up a little bit. Kind of in this off season or in between contests, the training is a little bit more generic where we're not really focusing on any one thing. Just trying to get stronger and a little bit better of shape. Once we know the show is happening and we get an idea of what the events are going to be, that's when we kind of kick it into overdrive and the motivation gets shot up. We start to learn who's going to be competing. So then we look at the competition, and at this level, strongman is a game. It is coming up and seeing, okay, these are the competitors that are going to be at the contest. These are the events that are going to be happening. Where can I give up some points? Where am I going to take them and win an event? How am I going to place the best in this competition that I can? So it becomes a strategy where, we kind of have to dissect the event, dissect who's competing, and really look at where, as an athlete, I will succeed and be placing highest. So, It's really an intricate part of the sport that I think not a lot of people realize. You know, they think we just get the events, we train hard, we show up. But at this level, like I said, it's a game, and you have to be ready to make adjustments on the fly and make sure that you're doing everything you can to put yourself in the best position.
Let's just say a couple years ago, what was it like doing a full day of eating, going into a competition prepared to now being paired with Stan Efferding?
It's great. I think for me, in the first 10 years of my competitive career, I never took nutrition and dieting as a serious part of the process. To me, it was always kind of eat to how I was feeling and then, you know, put all the work in the gym, but never really sit down and make a put conscious effort into my nutrition. And I was fortunate enough to be contacted by a beef company not too long ago. And so I'm sponsored by a meat company, which is like every strongman's dream. And now when I started working with them, I realized I was pretty much eating close to the vertical diet and realized if I'm doing it already as close as possible, why wouldn't I just make that final step and reach out to one of the best there is in the world? So Stan and I had met at World's Strongest Man 2019. That was the first time our paths have crossed. And so I shot him a text message and said, hey, man, you know, I'm really looking to put this final piece of the puzzle into place because I feel like I've been so close and I was on the edge of doing some really awesome things, but I had just missed the mark a few times. And I feel like the only other thing that I can control is my nutrition at this point. So I've been working with Stan for about 4.5 months now. And it's been great. The food is easy to eat. I feel good. You know, I feel like my recovery is great. My inflammation in my body's great. I put on some great size over the past few months working with him. So it's really been a great learning experience. And I'm excited now that, you know, with World's Strongest Man, hopefully coming up in November, to see where the diet goes and really to increase that performance aspect of me being an athlete and to see what kind of package we can bring to World's Strongest Man now that I have Derek and Stan in my corner.
For everyone watching, can you tell them what the vertical diet is?
Yeah, so the vertical diet is it's a pretty basic nutrition plan where the base of it and every meal is beef and rice. And then there's a bunch of things added on top of it to make it a whole, you know, kind of comprehensive nutrition program. So there's spinach and peppers added into the meals for vitamins and nutrients, eating a minimum of 6 whole eggs a day to eat micronutrient, you know, requirements. So there, you know, we see our macronutrients, which we know is carbs, protein, and fat. Micronutrients are all the smaller things that people tend to not think about, like magnesium, potassium, sodium, choline, all these other things that are essential for strength athletes to really perform at a high level. So it is combining those, looking at something called your basal metabolic rate, which is pretty much your minimum number of calories to maintain energy levels, and basing nutritional needs and focuses off of that. You know, so there's very general outlines, and then being one of Stan's athletes, he kind of dials it in and hones it in to make it a little bit more specific for me as, you know, a strongman competing at this level.
It was so amazing to like see how similar our stories were with me and Stan. Like he said he was like really lightweight when he was younger, and right now I'm just overcoming my eating disorder that I had. I put a video out about it, but it's so similar. It's so awesome to see how similar our stories were. But moving on, besides you, obviously, this is where a lot of my fanboy questions come in. Brian Shaw is one of my favorites. It seems like he's a super nice guy. And is he like that off camera?
He is, and it's annoying because not only is he super strong, but he's a great dad and a nice person, and you kind of wish he would be a jerk so you could not like him for something. But he's awesome. You know, I was fortunate enough where him and I were talking at the Arnold in Santa Monica back in January, and with me being already qualified for the Arnold and him not getting that qualification spot, we had just talked a lot about, and I wanted to pick his brain about mindset and going into the contest and how different it is and all these things. And he, without really me asking, invited to have me over his house to train for a weekend. So we threw that together, and I went out there in February, and he put his entire life on hold to help me train for the Arnold, which was the coolest thing in the world. You know, he was really just entering that higher tier of strongman competitions at World's Strongest Man in the Arnold when I was really just starting the sport in the late, in like, you know, 2010, 2009. So to see him be so successful in the sport and have such a pull. It was really cool that he just kind of put everything to the side to help me train for that competition. So he's so smart, and he's just such a nice guy, and he really is willing to help anybody in this sport.
Now, Neville's Heats has a question, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But I know Brian Shaw does like all these huge eating videos. When did you guys do like any big eating things together?
Unfortunately, we didn't. It was the weekend was so crazy. I was only there for 3 days, and we had 3 training sessions that we had to get in. So a lot of our time was just spent in the gym. I was fortunate enough to be the first guest he had at his brand new home gym, which was amazing. And it was a lot of just time in the gym, and we just kind of hung out outside of that and just ate our normal meals. So it was unfortunate, but that's not to say hopefully after all these travel restrictions are lifted, I'll be making another trip out there soon, and definitely throw down in an eating challenge. I have a 64-ounce tomahawk steak sitting in my freezer right now that I'd be happy to bring to his house so we could chow down on it.
Nice. Now, when we were watching the Q&A with you and Brian, we were just watching it before this, and it was funny when they said, like, now that you have your own gym, have you canceled all your gym memberships? And he's like, I haven't had a membership since 2006. So I was like, wow.
Yeah, it would be nice.
Yeah. I think Robert Oberst is one of the funniest strongmen out there. Do you ever plan on doing like videos together in the future?
Yeah, he's one where, him and I have this like friendly rivalry, seeing as we're, the top log pressers in the US. And, I think he's still a little bit bitter at the fact that I took his record from him a year and a half ago. And I still welcome his competition every time I step onto the stage, to compete for that top spot as the best log presser in America. But I think it would be awesome for him and I to get together and really just see the different styles of log pressing that we have. I think it's just really cool. He's a monster of a man. He's about 6'6", 6'8", weighs over 400 pounds. And then there's little me that, at 5'10", about 285 right now. So I think it would be really fun to put us together to, just do some like log press training and see the differences and see what works for others, what doesn't work. I think we would have an absolute blast. And him and I have competed together a few times, so we have a pretty good relationship as well.
Now, Nova Seat says, if you're just starting out, should you focus on high reps or increasing weight?
So when you're starting out, I think it needs to be a little bit of both, which is, I think, hard for a lot of people to realize. So I think, when we're looking at the main barbell movements that we think of, so squat, bench, overhead press, and deadlift, those are kind of the 4 main things that, as strength athletes, we really need to focus on. And I think for those exercises, you should definitely be trying to increase weight. So looking at something in a rep range anywhere between 3 and 6 reps, I think, is kind of a sweet spot for really building great strength. And then when you're looking at your accessory movements, so the smaller movements like bicep curls and isolation exercises, things you're going to be doing that are on the lighter side, you can really increase those weights. And that's something that I've really been doing is, kind of taking that bodybuilding style of training into my accessories where I'm doing supersets and really pairing exercises together, because as strength athletes, it also helps our conditioning. That's a forbidden word in most strongmen and powerlifters vocabulary, where they don't want to think about doing conditioning. But if you integrate it into your accessory work, it doesn't really feel like conditioning, but it gets the heart rate up. You're doing high reps. And that just helps strengthen the muscles, the tendons, to help prevent injury, but it also gets you stronger as well.
What was it like going on Joe Rogan with him? And I just want to say congratulations on that.
Thank you. It was really cool. For me, back in, so last year at World's Strongest Man, I was approached by a director who decided that she wanted to do a documentary on my life, being the only openly gay professional strongman in the world. And we had talked back and forth about trying to get it off the ground, and we had planned this trip out to LA for the Arnold Strongman Santa Monica. So knowing I was going out there a few weeks before the contest, my director and I had a conversation, and she was like, we really need to start raising money for this and trying to figure out how we're going to fund it. So I was like, well, Joe Rogan follows me on Instagram. Let me shoot him a message and see if I can go on his show. So I took a complete shot in the dark, decided to send him a DM on Instagram, completely expecting him not to read it or respond. But about 10 minutes after I had sent the message, he had messaged me back and said, "Sure, let's do it. When do you want to come on?" So it was surreal and crazy, to say the least, to know that I was about to go on the biggest podcast in the world. And it was just so cool because he's exactly how he is on the podcast is how he is in real life. He's super chill. He's really down to earth and really just a really nice person that finds genuine interest in whoever he's interviewing. So we had an awesome time. We had a great conversation. To be on a show like that for 2 hours and for him to give up his time and give his platform for me to speak on was just absolutely so great. And, to this day, him and I still stay in touch.
Did you guys do anything like off camera together?
Unfortunately, we didn't. I got to hang out in his man cave, which was really cool. So I got to see his gym, his cars, his shooting range, and all the stuff that he has in there. But the crazy thing about him is he records like 2 to 3 podcast episodes a day. So, and they're each about 2 to 2.5 hours long. Some go longer than that. So he's a workhorse and he just pumps out content nonstop. So it really kind of limits the availability that he has outside of the show time. But still, he was super friendly the entire time. He talked to us a little bit before I was on the show, like I said, for 2 hours. Then we did get to hang out and like have some coffee afterwards. So while it was short and sweet, it was, still just really amazing for me to be there on that platform.
What do you like to do outside of strongman / working out?
For me, a thing that I love to do is, I relax a lot. I am one of the few strongmen at this level that has, what I call my quote unquote real job. So, I'm not one of the fortunate ones who just gets to train and compete. So I work full time on top of going to the gym. So in my downtime, it really is just spending time with my husband, spending time with our 11-year-old English bulldog, and just trying to relax as much as possible, enjoy the time. We go on long walks with each other, go for, sometimes we'll just get in the car and go for a drive and see where we end up. Just doing stuff to kind of get our minds off of the hustle and bustle of everyday life that we're always thrown into. And actually now on top of that, I'm coaching at a CrossFit gym. So I coach 3 days a week at this CrossFit gym doing a strength and barbell club. So it, my downtime is very limited. So when I get to enjoy some time, it's, watching movies, just hanging out and relaxing is really just what I love doing.
Can you tell me about some of the speaking events you do?
Yeah. So, it's pretty awesome that, with the platform that I was given, obviously social media is unbelievably powerful, that I get to go around, the country and hopefully the world talking to people about my story, my experiences, and how I was able to kind of overcome adversity and kind of change the way people think of what gay means. So it's been amazing for me to talk to high school and middle school students, college students. I've talked to large corporations like Lego, and really just kind of been all over the place, which has just been so exciting. And for me, the most important thing is, it's talking to adults is great and talking to major corporations is awesome. But when I get to talk to students is really where I find the most impact and where I really relate really well. I worked in the high school and boarding school world for a long time. And I just have this ability to connect with that age of student where, I wasn't in their shoes that long ago. I'm only 28 years old. So, it was only 10 years ago that I was in high school. So for me, it's just being able to relate to them and say, I've been in your shoes. I know what you're going through, and to give some motivation to that 1 or 2 closeted boys or girls that might be in the audience, and to show them that my story it's kind of universal, right? It's, the things that I talk about can be extrapolated across life, and it's not just to gay, lesbian, trans teens. It's, kind of a story of success and whatever you want to achieve. I talked to a high school not long ago, and a boy called me afterwards saying, he's not gay, but seeing my story of failure to success motivated him when looking at baseball or when looking at football, that, he might not be the fastest, might not be the strongest, but he's going to work the hardest to be on the starting lineup. Stuff like that is just so cool for me to hear, that the message is being spread out and not just being seen as, this one-dimensional LGBTQ platform, that my story can be used for all athletes of any kind of sport to want to be better.
Now, I just got a couple questions left. Can you tell me about the sponsorships you have and how that came about?
Yeah, so I was in the sport of strongman for a long time before I got my first official sponsorship. The first sponsor I ever got was actually on my shirt right now, SBD. And I started working with them probably in 2016-ish. And so I had actually already been pro for almost 3 years before I got my first sponsorship and really got any notoriety in the sport. And, from there, it worked up to some supplement companies and some clothing companies. And now, it's amazing to me to be sponsored by some of the best in the world. You're wearing their shirt right now, Gymshark. Being sponsored by them is what I think that's honestly like the most surprising sponsorship I've gotten. They reached out to me after being on the Rogan podcast. And at that time, I was sponsored by Kinda Fit, Kinda Fat. And, Gymshark had emailed me saying, hey, we heard you. We love your story. We want to try to work something out. And for me, I had never even considered Gymshark as a viable option because all you see on social media is fitness models and, physique competitors that are sponsored by them. But they wanted to take a chance with me, and kind of broaden their horizons a little bit in the world of fitness. So it's been absolutely amazing to work with them. They've been fantastic in making me bigger clothes that actually fit, which is pretty fantastic. And then also my most recent sponsorship is the one on my hat, Animal. They've been a supplement company that's been around since the 70s, and they are, a tried and true badass hardcore company where the most hardcore and elite of lifters know about this company and use their products. So to be their first strongman athlete was even more of an honor because they're so well known across the sports, but they've only really been in powerlifting and bodybuilding. So for them to take a chance on me as a strongman athlete again was just so cool. So those are my three big sponsors right now: Animal, Gymshark, and SBD.
Do you ever plan on going into the cage?
It all depends, right? Like if I'm competing at the Arnold, I won't, because for me the Arnold Strongman Classic is the biggest and best strongman competition in the world. But if I have time to do something cool in the cage, I will absolutely go and do it. Whether we're doing a deadlift for reps or, I don't know what we could think of, but we could do something pretty cool, and pretty iconic, I think, when stepping into the cage, because that is one of the coolest atmospheres you could ever think of.
Now, I know you brought up Gymshark. There are some people that are sponsored by them that I'd like to interview, like Steve Cook, Lex Griffin, and Matt Does Fitness. Those people I'd like to interview. Those are pretty cool people. This is my last question. I was watching you on Mark Bell's podcast. What is your one inspirational message that you want to tell everyone here today?
For me, it's always stayed true, and it's something that I came up with going into World's Strongest Man 2017. That was my first year ever at World's Strongest Man. I was invited as a wild card athlete, and to be honest, Will, I never thought that I would get to that level. I never thought that I would be considered one of the strongest men in the world, and thought I'd be good enough to compete at World's Strongest Man. So getting that call to compete there was the highlight of my career so far. And when doing the informational packet for that contest, they asked you, what is your motivational quote and what do you, and I really couldn't think of anything. So I had sat on that for a couple of days. And while I was at the gym one day, thinking about my career and how I got to this point, I realized that there are a lot of people throughout my career that doubted me and didn't think that I could ever compete at World's Strongest Man. So I came up with the quote, train to be the person they said you would never become. And in that quote, it really just kind of sums up my entire career leading up to that point and what I still do now. And that's doing things that people think or thought that you could never achieve and proving them wrong the entire time. So, we talked about the social media thing and using negative comments to your advantage and using them as a motivational force in your training. And that's just something that has kind of powered me through my entire career for the past 11 years now. So I think that's the biggest thing. And as I mentioned before, it can be extrapolated across anything you do in life. It's not just in the gym. It's whether you want to be a writer, an artist, whether you're into sports and you want, it really, you can use that mindset to excel in anything.
Well, Rob, I just got to say, this was such a pleasure to hear your story. I had a lot of fun doing this. You are very motivating to me, and I hope that the people watching are motivated by you as well. I just want to say thank you again. Everything life has put in your way, you have overcome. That's what drives me as well. When people say I can't do things, that's the fuel for my fire. You inspire me to prove them wrong, and I want to just say thank you again for doing this. It means so much to me, and we'll catch you again next week, everyone. Thank you so much again. See you later, guys.
Thanks, Will.